AdLib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. AdLib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The AdLib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using AdLib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa, and I'm joined by Eric Franchi and special guest Jay Friedman. How are you, Jay?
Hey, Jay.
Doing wonderfully. Thank you. How are you?
This was Eric's idea. I said we didn't need two bald, bespectacled guys on the podcast, but Eric advocated for it because he likes having multiple bald men to stunt on with his hair.
It just makes me look better.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I were him, I would require every guest be bald. But yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Stop it. Anyway, Jay, thanks for joining us. You've been on the pod before when you were the CEO at Goodweight Group months ago. You stepped down as CEO of Goodweight Group. You have gotten super AI pilled, as we have, and have done like a deep dive on AI. You've done a deep dive on a lot of different companies building AI tools in the space. You've developed, I think, a very informed framework of where we are in ad tech right now with respect to AI and how brands might be thinking about this stuff. So let's just talk about it. So let's rewind. You left Goodweight Group and didn't take a day off. You just started contacting companies to learn about what they're doing in AI. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was supposed to be on like a 30-day sabbatical, and I don't know. I just kind of kept looking at newsletters and stuff and going, wow, that's really cool. Wow, that's really cool. And I started talking to a couple different AI companies and exploring, and it's too interesting and it's moving too fast to take time off right now. And so I dove in and I started making a list. And, at one point I got to 50 of these companies and thought that was really impressive. And now I'm up to 180 or whatever. But the reality is, I mean, most of them are quote AI more than they are AI, and that's fine. And so, yeah, the space is fascinating. It reminds me of early days of programmatic or even early days of internet where everybody's rushing to claim that they are a part of a certain space and with or without differentiation. And I think this is where brands and agencies, really any buyer, just gets fairly overwhelmed, not unfairly at all, like fairly overwhelmed, because it's like there's a dozen new companies a week and you can vibe code a website in a half an hour now. And so I think sorting through this mess will require expertise.
What's the first step in sorting through this mess? And what have you discovered in terms of some of the solutions that are out there that are more interesting or more promising than others?
The first step, which was not the first step I took, but the first step that I would recommend people take, and it took me a while to get there, is understanding that there is an AI ecosystem, and it is not just the use case of the AI itself that you are evaluating. So, for instance, is it creative video generation or is it media buying trafficking automation, right?
Two of the most popular, by the way, of the startups that are emerging.
Okay, great. So you've got that, but what happens is then people start saying, well, we're an agentic layer, or we're an orchestration layer, or we're a contextual engine that underpins. And are we the agents or are we the layer? Are we the orchestration? And so AI, I was thinking through it. I'm like, is this ecosystem like a house? Is it like a submarine? Is it like, and what it turns out that the way, I think the best way that I've come up to think about this is that AI is like a city, and you've got your NVIDIA and Bedrock power plant right in the center, but then you need a zoning and permits office that tells everybody what they can do with the land they're on, which is a governance layer. And I think that there's a lot of people buying AI tools right now without governance layers, and stuff's just flying out the door, and CISOs are absolutely right to be nervous. right? I just talked to a guy this morning who has 250,000 patients in a healthcare system that he manages. And I said, I'm sure that your receptionists are pulling up the file, copying and pasting into ChatGPT and saying, what should I say? And he was, like hair on fire, right? Like, no, that's terrible. So there's the governance component. Then there's the engines or whatever. So it's like, okay, there's transit authority, right? What's allowed to go between different parts of the city? What's allowed to go in and out? There's a new breed of cybersecurity that needs to be installed, right? Because again, if you're copying and pasting more than a couple hundred characters into ChatGPT, that should alert an organization, right? And especially if there's any address or phone numbers or whatever it is. So there's this whole city that needs to be built. And I think that the brands are evaluating tools, for example, creative video generation, without regard for how it integrates into any other part of the city, right? They're like, I want to buy a house. And it's like, great. Is that house within 2 miles of a fire department? I have no idea. And so is it on a road? Does it have power? And so I think that the need to understand where things fit in is completely underappreciated.
Well, first, I was just laughing when Jay's talking about the popo of the AI city. Jay's basically like, we need a patrol organization to lock these mother effers down. People are going rogue. Gotta lock up the nurses. No sensitive information in my ChatGPT instance.
I mean, it's a very legitimate concern. If you're a large organization or any organization, just the shadow AI that's happening, it's out of control.
I'm sure it's happening to like every organization, right? And that's probably why my understanding from talking to friends who work at big corps is they're often preferencing like their own AI tools and such, like they're trying to lock it down. But I'm sure you're right. And like that'll be a massive opportunity, which is interesting because it's like innovation begets innovation, right? In the sense that it's like you have this new wave of tools and you're like, okay, but who's going to make the tools that allow large corporations to deal with the tools?
That's exactly it. And so that's where there's these layers and infrastructure that need to be built and considered. And then if you're a brand and you think, okay, now I've got to get like IT and security involved and legal involved, right? Now this went from a 3-month buying decision to a 12-month buying decision, but we can't wait 12 months. So that's the friction that is out there today. And the startups can't wait for 12 months. Right, to sell. They need revenue.
They got 18 months of runway.
They got 18 months of runway. Yeah, if 12 extends to 18, they're out of money and they're counting on some revenue. And so there have to be safe ways and reliable ways to get startups into an enterprise without risk. And if you think about, having gone through the procurement cycle as an agency many times, the list of stewardship requirements. How much general liability do you have? What are you GDPR and CCPI certified? I know, but you don't have any data that's in the UK. I know it doesn't matter. We want GDPR. Okay, cool. And so when you look at this laundry list of requirements that brands put on their vendors for a startup, that's nuts, right? They don't have most of that. They haven't gone through full SOC 2 certification all the time. And so the brands and the startups are building a bridge. And they're like, we're going to meet in the middle, except one is like 42 feet higher than the other. And they come together and they're like, oh, yeah, my car is going to not make that if it has to drop.
Yeah. Okay. So observation number one is that everybody's excited. Everybody's moving really, really fast. And there is an opportunity, or in J speak, like a burning critical need for a compliance, governance, security focus and layer or layers just to make sure bad things, happen as little as possible.
And I would actually pull it back. Yes, the governance and everything is important, but just for the marketer, just know the layer at which you're buying. You have to know, are you buying an engine, an orchestration layer, an agent, right? Like just knowing what part of the city you're buying in. Are you buying land to develop or are you buying land for your own house? Like that's what I think is missing right now. So even if the compliance function is like, just, hey, don't worry about it. I think buyers are likely to buy 2 tools that overlap or 2 tools that don't talk to each other.
Got it. Okay. So more education, unfortunately, more industry maps and standards that people can start to build boxes around.
Yeah. And I think the industry maps, rather than just being a whole bunch of stuff, like everybody loves those maps. But what the industry needs right now is an understanding of how each box connects together and why.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. That's a good observation. What's exciting? Like what are you finding that are like cool, interesting, has you leaned in?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, there are a couple companies out there that I've started talking to and I'm just really interested in following. Of course, this may change in 30, 60, who knows? But, I think that there are only so many steps between the brief, the creative and media brief, all the way through to measurement and insights. Right. So, and there's creative steps, there's media steps, but there's planning, there's buying, there's activation, there's trafficking, there's only so many steps. So one agency might think there's 10, one might think there's 14. It doesn't really matter. Right. And as you go through, I think you find a lot of companies who say, oh, we do 5 of those. It's like, okay, that's a tall order. Let me vet and validate. And it turns out they do 1 or 2 really well with a little bit of a sprinkle of capability on some of the others.
I was going to say Meta is the one that comes to mind that can truly say they do, 5 of them and do them really well.
Right. So I think if you look at, I think there's a couple things I would look for. Number one, there are a ton of these companies right now that are essentially an LLM and a wrapper, right? That's got to go. Like, I don't need you to put a pretty skin on top of ChatGPT or Grok or whatever it may be. I can do that myself. And so I think a very easy way to just figure that out is if you copy and paste a prompt into a ChatGPT or Gemini and one of these tools, and you get about the same answer, then you probably can just stick with your $20 a month and move on. A lot of them are N8N or Zapier wrappers, right? There's just automation. And depending on the complexity of the automation, that could be okay. I mean, sometimes they've automated quite an orchestra or synchronous series of events, but you don't need someone to automate like into the Meta API on trafficking your creative. Like there's 100 companies that do that and probably many free ChatGPT bots. So I think starting toward the beginning, I mean, I've talked to the folks over at Waldo.fyi. They just raised their Series A. Super interesting, building out workflows and media planning. Talked to the folks over at TAU, which I think I passed on to you, Eric. But in terms of they do some planning, but they also do a lot of trafficking optimization. Fluency is an interesting company who they've been around for a while and they were really more automation oriented, but they've introduced some neat AI features into the interface. There's companies like madtech.ai or Whatagraph, being from Texas, where Whataburger is a big deal. I was very happy about Whatagraph. So that's kind of like, those are some of the companies that take bits. And then you've got like an Akio, AKKIO, that really kind of does the whole thing. And you have to decide, do you want one system that does everything, sometimes the best, sometimes not, right? Because nothing can be a 10 out of 10 in everything. Or do you want to put together a series of things that you think are a 10 in every category, but it requires some work on your side?
So tell us more about, I've never heard of this company Akio, so I'm taking a look at them now. And you said like they basically do everything. So when you say that, what is the sort of breadth of what they do? And how would you use it as a, very recent agency CEO?
Yeah. So if you wanted to talk to Akio and install them into your agency or your brand or whatever, you would essentially, you'd start with media planning, which they have media planning modules and workflows. And you would then push that out into the buy, right? And then, you have to determine, are you using a placements.io or are you using a Prisma or something like that as an underlying infrastructure and billing layer? Because I don't think that Akio does billing. So there's a little communication required there. But you push it out to buy, you push it into trafficking, then you get reporting right in the same platform and you get optimization recommendations and you can get some measurement all in one platform. And, you have to decide, if you look across each of those functions, is each of those functions, does it meet your standards? Does it beat your standard? Like, it just depends, And I think they were pretty heavily backed by one of the larger agencies.
Yeah, I see this, not to, do promo for Accio, they'll like low key sponsor the pod, hire Sharpen, whatever. But I see like Horizon, the CEO of Horizon, like is saying he's basically positioning Accio as like the engine of their AI innovation, which like as you can attest to, like every agency CEO is also looking for a narrative on this and a strategy that they can point to. So
yeah, I mean, Horizon backed them pretty significantly from what I understand. And may have a vested interest in putting a quote out there. I don't know. But what I think is the challenge for agency CEOs today is that you have to have a story. We have 18,000 agents. We have 100,000 agents. I think if you talk to the people on the front line and you say, how much do agents do the work that that you're involved with? We don't have any agents. So you have to have a story. But if I'm a brand today, the real story that I want to hear is we know how to educate you to build what you need. I don't want to see a flashy demo that shows how something is automated if it doesn't help my enterprise get to where it needs to be, right? The flashy demo should just mean things are going to cost me less, right? Like, okay, great. But if I don't learn how to build my enterprise and you tell me you have 18,000 agents, why am I working with you?
So you're saying, if you're the CMO of a brand and you're talking to an agency CEO or seller, the question is kind of like, can you educate me on this thing and like lead me in the right direction and sort of, teach the man to fish, that's what they should be focusing on?
I say like, if you go hire someone to like repave a driveway or something and someone comes in and says, all right, this is going to be $2,000. And you're like, okay, that's not bad. And someone else comes in and he goes, here's the deal. It's going to be $4,000 and here's why. Because you have a line running under here, and if you use this material that's too cheap, you're going to infect the line, and you're going to have this and you're like, I'll spend the $4,000 because that person taught me how to buy. So I think that brands should be looking for, and of course there's procurement complications and finance partnerships and everything else, but I don't think brands know how to build their own stack and so if I can partner with an agency today that is going to keep me ahead consistently, that is so much more valuable in the next 24 months than we have lots of agents.
So a lot of what we've been talking about is infrastructure, right? Like automation of creative planning, maybe putting some of those tools together. In your deep dive in the space, right? So we've talked about AI being, this exciting moment to reinvent and reimagine infrastructure and process. We've also talked about it as a way to reinvent advertising. Joe and I both work with Firsthand, various capacities. I think you've spent some time with Firsthand. That's an example of a company that is trying to innovate on the advertising side, right? Like come up with like a new advertising format with AI. How much is happening around that in, your exploration of the space? And do you have a view on what that's going to look like in 18, 24 months?
I think we end up reverting as an industry to the place that is the lowest friction to place ads in front of eyeballs. So I think to innovate new formats, that happens. I mean, it happened with native per se, but did it because there were advertorials in, the New Yorker 50 years ago. And so maybe not the New Yorker.
No, I would argue, yeah. I would argue, yes. I would argue that Meta broadly, and then specific to Facebook and Instagram, invented a beautiful mobile-first format that created a massive amount of value, and it was native to the platform. So the question is, and maybe we're too early, what is the native to the platform for the AI age?
And I guess and you can just stop me at any time that we go down this rabbit hole, but as you're scrolling through your feed and you get a mobile native to the platform Instagram ad, right? I mean, it's clear it's an ad, but it feels at home. But the reality is good TV ads, it's just a continuation of video that was video. You're showing me the NFL, you're showing me the NFL, and now you're showing me some, insurance company. I don't remember, but whatever.
I thought about insurance too.
It's about 70% of ads today. When I was a kid, I remember thinking, is everything automotive and laundry? And now today it's just insurance. And so like that is a native format, and that it doesn't really change formats. It shouldn't, the banner ad's probably a little bit out there. So I think native to the platform, yeah, sponsored listings are somewhat native, in terms of like retail media. And, I was at dinner in Adweek a couple of weeks ago, and you get people who, one of the number one questions that was asked was like, I know, but I'm just trying to figure out how to put ads in ChatGPT. And I'm like, well, you're going to be doing that until they allow ads in ChatGPT. Because right now, that's not something that can happen. So I don't know what the native to the platform looks like, but I also think that our industry labors over and laments about the need to we need to make sure the user experience is really, really good. We need to make sure, and then we just throw ads in, and it never ends up being really all that better than it would have been otherwise. But you know what? Companies make money and consumers don't have to pay $50 a month. And so I don't think it's going to change much. I think there's going to be ads in chat, and so be it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you're saying on the consumer end, you don't think the ad experience will change all that much?
There might be a new format. There might be whatever, but it's going to be clearly an ad, and it's annoying.
I guess I have a couple divergent reactions to that. On the one hand, I think that second thing of there's going to be an ad and it's going to be annoying. I think that's pretty much true. And that the mistake that is always made is people are consumers hate ads. It's well, no, I mean, consumers don't hate ads. If you ask them in a survey, would they rather have them or not? They'll say no. But ultimately, they are content to make the value exchange of I'll look at this in an ad that I may find annoying or might interrupt me a little bit. And in exchange, I get free shit. And I like the free shit. And yeah, I don't think that value exchange is going anywhere.
No, and I don't like taxes, but I do it, right? But I prefer not to have a completely lawless society with no safeguards, right? And so
right.
I think this whole idea of I really do feel this push to, but we need to make something that consumers will like, is saying we need to sell this new tax package as something consumers will like. I don't think you do. I think this is the tax of getting cheaper media.
I think that's such a great analogy because I think Silicon, the listeners of this pod are mostly advertising people, so they get it. But the Silicon Valley people, they tie themselves into knots every new generation of consumer technology being we're not going to do ads because ads are the worst thing you could ever do. And it's no, they're fine. And it's they facilitate a very suitable value exchange that consumers will always ultimately sign up for. And so that we're going to have ads
at their best. And again, this is maybe why it's, this native to the platform theme is important. At their best, they're helpful, right?
Sure.
AdWords, super helpful. Instagram ads, super helpful to get me to discover shit that, I should buy. Yeah. Amazon ads, ridiculously helpful, right? So I think that there's an opportunity here, and we don't need to spend any more time on this. I think there's an opportunity here with the nature of AI being, so good to provide you a step function higher in terms of an answer or what you need for the advertising experience to be elevated as a result. Or and it's just going to be an annoying ad, and you're right.
I want to have,
and I owe you a beer.
I want to have my cake and eat it too, because I said I had two divergent reactions. And I do agree with Jay. I think that fundamental value exchange that, again, Silicon Valley can't accept, I think is true. At the same time, I think you're right, Eric, that meta ads are really good. I actually kind of like my Instagram ads, and I do buy stuff off them. They do legit. The thing adtech always says where they're well, the point, an ad is a recommendation and we're just going to get you something you find valuable. I actually kind of find that's true with Meta. And I think it is true that Chat GPT, which is my LLM of choice because I'm basic like that, it knows so much about me in such a deep deterministic way, in a way that Meta and Google have to infer. And they do a very good job of inferring, but ChatGPT has such rich, vast long form information on me. And I do think that Eric is also right that I think the ads will get better. They will get more helpful. And in the case of what a First Hand is doing, I think they'll get more interactive, whatever. So the same way Meta represented a leap forward, I think we might see another leap forward of that kind. But to that point, it's not people are having sidewalk conversations those Meta ads. I love them. It's the best consumer experience I've ever had, and that'll probably remain the same.
So it's a yes and in that I haven't seen a State Farm ad or a Liberty Mutual ad or any of those ads on Meta properties in maybe ever. I don't know. And that may be because I have not searched about insurance in years and years and years, right? But the problem is you can't create upper funnel. You can't create the awareness and brand affinity and brand emotional tie without it. And so that's why the NFL is like overflowing with those types of ads. And if you look at sponsored listings, and if I search Land O'Lakes butter and Kerry butter comes up first, that's not a good consumer experience. That's a paid ad, right? But that shit happens all the time. And so, and actually, I think if you want a trend to predict, I think that over the next 5 years, I just posted on LinkedIn the other day, 31 of the top 60 advertisers underperformed GDP growth over the last 15 years. Okay, underperformed. And so this is of the top 60 advertisers. So if you're looking at an agency and you're worried about like, will my ad unit be annoying or I'm like, you know what? I just want to build a brand that a consumer identifies with personally. And so that requires annoying ads.
Well put, Jay. What else haven't we covered in your AI journey that we should?
Well, I mean, we haven't talked about the fact that we shouldn't talk about AdCP much. I think it's a big deal, right? Like, thank God all of the outlets in my house are the same like I don't have to have a different plug for every device like we used to have for cell phone chargers. But we don't need to talk about it as an industry much. It just needs to get done and we need to go to it. Like, you don't go to the electricians conference and it's like, we're going to talk about outlet shape. It's like, no, they solved that and we're done. And there was probably at some point they talked about standards, but the electricians themselves didn't really care. They just wanted it solved.
Do you think that maybe the level of attention that kind of announcement gets in ad tech, I mean, yes, it's partially attributable to the personalities involved in these kinds of dynamics, but it's also because I feel like those conversations in programmatic are never ending.
Correct.
Yeah.
But here's the issue. CMOs spend 10% of their time thinking about media, and their time slots round to like the 5% mark. Okay. And they spend about 10% of the 10% on programmatic, which rounds to 0. And so all of the programmatic conversations about what is programmatic and what is blah, 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 those are all echo chamber conversations. You can put 10 CMOs in a room. They haven't even heard that those conversations are happening and they don't care. So the people with the money really don't care about this stuff. And I think that we are misaligning ourselves and not solving a problem that a CMO actually has because we can create content that makes people giggle and think, oh my gosh, it's so funny. We're talking about this again. And then we create new companies to solve problems that nobody has, right? So I think if companies in ad tech or programmatic or agentic or whatever really want to succeed, they will solve the problem that the paying customer actually has.
I do really take that point. I mean, we were talking about, or we've, as an industry, we've been having conversation about, for example, like Jeff Green doing, the pod with Adam Heimlich and Gareth Glazer a couple weeks ago. And it's like, it's fine to do a technical pod with ad tech nerds. Like, that's great, go do that. But my argument about it from a communications perspective, which is obviously my domain, was like, I would like to see Jeff do like 10 podcast appearances. And that kind of thing is like one of the 10. Like as opposed to that being like the first podcast appearance from him in a couple months, because it's like, to your point, Jay, if that's like 1% of what the CMO is thinking about is this kind of like technical programmatic stuff, it's like you have to be so much more big picture to even get that person to pay attention. And then maybe you have the privilege once you have their attention of getting into some of the more granular stuff. But like, I would like to see Jeff as like the sort of de facto leader of like open internet ad tech, talking about the kinds of things you're talking about, the AI innovations that are going to make open internet advertising more effective, yada, yada. I think that's kind of the level on which someone like Jeff can engage the CMO class versus the technical things.
Yeah. I mean, on Jeff specifically, I think there's 15,000 people in this industry that will second guess everything he does. And, he's a smart guy. So I'll let him be on that. But I do think that engaging at the A&A level and the work level and the WFA level, right? Like engaging at those levels for the agentic people, for the programmatic people, and not talking specifically about programmatic or agentic or anything, but talking about the implications for how brands can be connected with consumers. It's so funny because, we all sit here and we talk about this tech or that tech, and then, we go to the store and we're like, I'm totally buying that one. Why would you buy that one? It's more expensive than the one next to it. It's like, I know, but that brand gets me. It's like, that didn't happen because of programmatic. That happened because of creative. That happened because of brand personality.
Yeah.
And so we love Meta and we love Google because they have this impeccable algorithm for plucking off the demand and harvesting the demand that exists, right? But creating demand and creating brand specific demand, that's not being done well today.
So if you, as an ad tech CEO, even as an agency CEO, you want to talk to brand CMOs, right? And you want to talk to them about the state of AI and what they should be thinking of the brand. The Nike CMO walks in, they're like, I got to figure out all this AI stuff. What are kind of the 2 or 3 big points you're going to hit with them of here are the areas you should be investing in or thinking about?
I think every CMO has a very different challenge, and part of the reason for that, and that's not a scapegoat answer. I'll get to the real answer. But, the reason for that is that they get different pressure from the board and from the market position they're in. And so there are brands who are losing share, there are brands who are gaining share, brands who are hitting escape velocity, right? So everybody has a very different position. And I think number one, what I try to do is I try to look at the extremes. What are the things that are costing you the most and netting you the least? And right there, let's start plucking off things that we can either stop doing altogether or we can turn into automation or AI or whatever it may be. I also think we often pursue perfect or fun at the expense of decent. And so it's like, oh, I want to create customer email journey that uses ChatGPT to write an email based on their meta engagement, which it's like, that's cool, right? But by the way, I just found 8% of your stuff running in fraud. Here's $7 million back, right? So I think as someone who would talk to CMO, I would just want to look at where is your money going and what are your greatest needs? Where are you relative to the category? And how do the brands that you're competing with capture your customers' hearts in a way that you're not right now? We can use AI all day long to solve that, right? If I have carpet in my house and it's dirty or whatever, let's not focus first on that I need electricity for a vacuum. Let's focus on how did it get there? How dirty is it? Sometimes we go straight to not only the solution, but over spending way too much time on the tool and how excited we are that tool exists for that solution, and not enough time finding that there's a much bigger problem somewhere else.
That's so good. And also, makes me reconsider the, longstanding kind of industry meme that, agencies are dead in the age of AI. Who's gonna have that type of conversation? But for someone who lives and breathes this all day long, in service of CMOs.
So that is where the CMO can provide just outsized value to the board, is to say, you name any brand in history and they only did well because they had brand love and, and suitability and identity sharing with consumers. And here are our metrics, right? So forget about cost per click that gets to our website. Here are the metrics, because that's the stuff that sustains a brand. Think about Reese's. Let's say Reese's didn't advertise for the next 3 years. Then you might totally disagree with me. Reese's is a generational brand. Generations of people know Reese's and wouldn't forget about Reese's if they didn't advertise for 10 years. Now, they might lose share or whatever it is, right? But build your brand to that. Distinguished. The color palette is instantly recognizable. It's the only candy of its shape, right? Build your brand to that, and you're so much less worried about whether your agentic flow of MCP fits into the agentic flow that's really cool in New York tomorrow.
That's so good. Jay, thank you so much for bringing us all back down to earth. This is great, man. And again, for somebody that spent like months and months talking to, the most technical AI startups, you're reminding us that brand love is at the end of the day what moves things. So we really appreciate you. Where can people find you these days? Are you doing stuff? You out there? You're on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm consulting, but also realizing that I'm not someone who wants to consult for very long. It's like quite a bit of the wrong type of work for me. But the people that I'm consulting with are amazing. That's what keeps me like hooked. Yeah, I mean on LinkedIn, JaymFriedman, JM Friedman on LinkedIn, and I'm trying to follow the Andrew Tyndall advice of posting daily, and I have not succeeded just yet, but I will try to get there.
Well, we love that on this pod. So thank you for practicing the CEO evangelism playbook. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for bringing us back to what the CMO really cares about. The fundamentals never go out of style, and nor does Eric's hair. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Take care. Comb your hair. We'll see you next week, everybody.